Did you know that the history of how we talk to each other is way weirder than you think? From ancient tricks to the very first text, we're diving into 10 mind-blowing secrets of communication. Stick around, because fact number 8 will totally change how you see your computer. Let's kick things off with one of the oldest forms of long-distance chat, smoke signals. Way before we had phones, Native American tribes and soldiers in ancient China used smoke to send messages across vast distances. It wasn't just random puffs of smoke either. They had a whole system. The color, shape, and frequency of the smoke puffs could signal anything from an approaching enemy to a successful hunt. Imagine trying to text your friend using a bonfire. It was a real skill. It required a clear line of sight and someone on the other end who knew the code. It was the original wireless communication, powered by fire and a bit of clever thinking. Next up, let's talk about our feathered friends, the carrier pigeons. For centuries, these birds were the unsung heroes of communication, especially in warfare. From ancient Rome to World War I, pigeons were trained to fly back to their home lost, carrying tiny messages tied to their legs. They were incredibly reliable, often flying through dangerous battlefields to deliver critical intelligence. Some pigeons even became famous war heroes, decorated for their bravery. Think about it, these birds were essentially the first airmail service, navigating hundreds of miles without a GPS. They were faster and more secure than human messengers, proving that sometimes nature has the best technology. It's an amazing example of humans and animals working together to bridge distances. Jumping forward to 1844, we get a message that literally echoed with divine wonder. Samuel Morse, the inventor of the telegraph and Morse code, sent the very first official telegram from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. The message? What had God wrought? It was a quote from the Bible, chosen by the daughter of a friend, and it perfectly captured the awe and magnitude of the moment. For the first time, a complex message could travel almost instantly over a long distance. This single sentence marked the beginning of the telecommunications era, shrinking the world in a way no one had ever imagined. The telegraph system spread like wildfire, connecting cities and continents and changing business, news, and personal relationships forever. But long before Morse code, the ancient Greeks had their own version of a telegraph system. They used a network of fire beacons strategically placed on mountaintops. By lighting them in a specific sequence, they could send prearranged, coded messages across their empire incredibly fast. The most famous story comes from the playwright Aeschylus, who wrote about how the news of Troy's fall was transmitted to Greece in a single night using a chain of these beacons. It was a simple yet brilliant system. Each station would see the fire from the previous one and light their own, passing the signal along. It was like a game of telephone, but with giant torches, proving that even thousands of years ago, people were desperate for faster news. Now for a name everyone knows, Alexander Graham Bell. We all learned in school that he invented the telephone, but do you know what the very first words spoken over one were? On March 10, 1876, Bell made the first successful call to his assistant, Thomas Watson, who was in an adjacent room. Having just spilled some battery acid on himself, Bell spoke into the device and said, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." And Watson heard him. It wasn't a grand poetic statement. It was a simple, practical request. But those words signaled the birth of a technology that would connect billions of people. It is a humble beginning for an invention that completely revolutionized human interaction and made the world a much smaller place. Moving into the 20th century, Morse code got a major upgrade when it went wireless, thanks to the invention of the radio. This allowed ships at sea to communicate with each other and with land over vast stretches of ocean. Before this, ships were completely isolated once they left port. But with wireless telegraphy, they could send distress signals, receive weather warnings, and report their positions. The sinking of the Titanic in 1912 is a famous, tragic example of its importance. The distress calls sent via Morse code were instrumental in saving the lives of the survivors. This technology turned the lonely, dangerous seas into a connected network, dramatically improving maritime safety. But radio wasn't just for dots and dashes. On Christmas Eve in 1906, something magical happened. Radio operators on ships in the Atlantic were expecting the usual Morse code signals. Instead, they heard a human voice. It was Reginald Fessenden, a Canadian inventor, conducting the very first public radio broadcast. He played a violin piece, read a passage from the Bible, and wished everyone a Merry Christmas. The operators were stunned. They had never heard music or speech come out of their equipment before. This event marked the beginning of radio as an entertainment medium, paving the way for the news broadcasts, music stations, and podcasts we listen to today. All right, here's the fact I promise will blow your mind. Before we had screens and keyboards, how did the very first computers talk to each other, or even process information? The answer is punch cards. These were stiff pieces of paper with holes punched in specific patterns. Each pattern of holes represented a piece of data or a command. You would feed stacks of these cards into a giant room-sized computer to run a program. A single complex program could require thousands of cards, and if you dropped the stack, you were in big trouble. It was a slow, meticulous process, but it laid the groundwork for all modern computing. It is wild to think that the sleek laptop or phone you're reusing now evolved from a system of holes in paper. And speaking of digital communication, what about the first email? It was sent way back in 1971 by a computer engineer named Ray Tomlinson. He sent it between two computers that were sitting right next to each other. The content of the message is lost to history, but Tomlinson himself thinks it was probably something mundane and forgettable. Finally, let us wrap up with the birth of a communication method most of us use every single day, the text message. The very first SMS was sent on December 3, 1992. Neil Papworth, a 22-year-old test engineer, sent it from a computer to the phone of a director at Vodafone. Since phones didn't have keyboards yet, he couldn't reply. And what did that historic first text say? A simple, festive message. Merry Christmas. It took a while for texting to catch on, but once it did, it completely changed how we communicate. That two-word message was the start of a revolution, leading to emojis, group chats, and the instant. Bite-sized conversations that define our modern world. From smoke signals to Merry Christmas, the way we connect has been on an incredible journey. If you found these facts as amazing as I did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.